Welcome to the podcast today. My name is Douglas Gabriel. I'm here with my friend John Barnwell, and today we're going to talk about Surviving Apocalypse, Creating Your Ark, a new book that's come out in the works of Rudolf Steiner series that John has been editing so painstakingly late into the night. This is an amazing thing because last time we showed you the big picture, which was in How to Become an Angel, and that's far, far into the distant future. Today, we're going to talk about the apocalypse that we see around us, why we see it, and how we get through it by creating our own ark. Welcome to the show, John.
Well, hello, Douglas, and I derive such warm-hearted pleasure from speaking to everybody out there, and it's such a privilege to be able to address something I've spent most of my adult life wrestling with, as has Douglas. And fortunately, I've had Dr. Douglas Gabriel, the leading authority on Waldorf education in North America, and an astounding individual in his life experience. And so I'll be as surprised as you are, because we don't really game up for this. We just kind of wing it because we've been talking for quite a while. And he is my greatest student and also my greatest teacher. So hello, Douglas.
Well, John, I think out every single word I'm going to say on these, and then I ignore it and then go forward. Because, people want to hear this in a way that is applicable. They want to hear it in a way that is timely. And as Rudolf Steiner said, if you're going to be an anthroposophist or a spiritual scientist, you need to be aware of everything going on in the world, current affairs, and make sure that you know what the place of all these things are in the big picture. And that's why we started this series. My beautiful producer, who happens to be my wife, I talked my producer into being my wife, said to me, I should take all these articles I've worked on for 40 years and books and everything else and really make it palatable for people in short, digestible study guides. And so that's what we're doing. And so what we first had to do was all that work, and that's been done. And now we're putting them out. And as we do, I, of course, ask the smartest person I know, Tyler Gabriel, if what should be the first topic. And of course, she always knows you have to hit the topic that is the most in the highest concern for people in our time. So what was the first book? The Incarnation of Ahriman, the occult annihilation of the soul. In other words, wake up to the evil that you are swimming around in. There's nothing you can do about it except know what it is and know the antidote for it. And so that's the first book. The second book was something that we've described it before, but it's one of the most difficult tasks you can have in anthroposophy, which is to put an entire cosmology, Steiner's cosmology, into one book in a place where people can understand it with the proper nomenclature, the proper dates, the proper astrological associations and correspondences and all this. And that's what the book, How to Become an Angel, is. But this book, the third in the series, Surviving Apocalypse, was something that again and again, as Tyler and I were putting out over the last, 10 years or so, articles on the internet, free articles for people to read, we were trying to give answers to the questions that were the most asked by people, the ones that they had fear and anxiety about, the ones they were worried about. And what we made sure we did in every single one of those articles, in every video we ever did, is to give you the antidote. Yes, we do need to spell out the evil of our time, for evil is sufficient unto the day thereof, according to the Bible. What's that? Matthew 6:34. But right before that, it says, "Don't take no worry for what comes for tomorrow. Let that take care of itself." What you need to worry about is that there's sufficient evil in this day to make sure that you don't think about tomorrow. And that's where most of our fears come from, thinking about tomorrow. So that's why we put the whole cosmology in the book, How to Become an Angel, so that you could have, even if you're the most experienced anthroposophist on the earth, I don't care. That's never been put in a book before, what we did. And I couldn't have done it myself. I had to have a lot of help, especially from John And together we worked out a system that you can say, what is the future? Oh, I think I'll look it up in these books. Well, what we're going to talk about today is not the future, but it's the present. And that is literally, if you asked 10 people, 9 out of 10 people would say, if you asked them, are we in the apocalypse? They would say yes. Are we in the end times? They would say yes. Are the revelations of St. John the Divine in his book coming true now? And they would say yes. And you see this everywhere, whether it's through Baptist ministers interpreting the scripture, or Christians, or even Roman Catholics, or spiritual people, or all these people all say the same thing, that right now we are at a crux in time where it is such a focus that Rudolf Steiner said, as a matter of fact, because this is, I don't like to quote things too much, but because this is so exacting, I want to make sure you hear the exact words of Rudolf Steiner. Oh, by the way, this is the book, Surviving Apocalypse. But the point is that he says, quote, in other words, if we allow things to take their course in the manner in which they have taken their course under the influence of the world conception, which has arisen in the 19th century, and in the form in which it can understand it, if we allow things to take this course, we shall face the war of all against all at the end of the 20th century. We're at the end of the 20th century. So is this the war of all against all? Well, this takes a little bit of clarification from Rudolf Steiner's work. And what we also like to do with this entire series is answer the most difficult questions that people have given me and John over decades. And I've trained hundreds of teachers, if not thousands of teachers, hundreds of them being people in Waldorf education. And they ask these questions, and they want answers so that they won't be fearful and be anxious. And that's what this is about. So what we're going to say today is exactly what Matthew 6:36 says. Evil is sufficient unto the day thereof. In other words, the reason we're at the crux of time is because in 1998, for the third time, Sorot, the sun demon, who in the book of Revelation, Rudolf Steiner identifies as the beast with two horns, that he is influencing the earth in a very powerful way every 666 years. And so in 1998, some people believed that there was a giant influence of Sorot, the Antichrist, but literally the one who has fallen from the sun, who has yet to come down to the earth, had a very powerful influence. Now, that might be what Rudolf Steiner was pointing at the turn of into the year 2000, that we would be facing this. He also pointed out at that exact moment that Ahriman would be incarnated, as we talked about with the first book in the series. And so you have to ask the question, well, what's going on right now that Ahriman is incarnated, the only time in a human body? Materialism is at its height. Evil seems to be pervasive in all directions. We seem to be in the time of the bowls of wrath, and we'll go into that in a minute. But I mean, look at the sixth bowl. The angel pours the sixth bowl, and well, I'll read it in a minute. But the point is that the exact things are happening right now that literally in history they've never happened before. So people are saying, well, we are at the end times in the bowls of wrath. We're at the sixth bowl. The seventh bowl is terrifying, that the earth has the biggest earthquakes there ever have been, that the sun is scorching the earth, that the giant hail rains down from the sky. In other words, giant meteorites, 100 pounds each or something to that effect. But anyway, we have these cataclysmic aspects that we are looking at. Well, we can see that in the sun. If you follow the research with the sun, we are at a turning point that is undeniable. We were supposed to hit the Maunder minimum. We skipped over that, so we didn't go into an ice age. We went into the weakest magnetic field the Earth has ever had in its history that we know of, and some of the strongest solar flares, coronal mass ejections, and other emissions from the sun happening right now. So is the Earth scorching Is the sun scorching the earth? Yes. Could you say that that the seas have turned red, basically with the poison? Well, how about all the oil spills? That the rivers and the creeks are becoming poisonous? How about all of the toxic leaks and poisons from railroad accidents and so on and so forth all over America happening right now? So all these things you could go right down the list, but you can't understand a lick of it if you don't understand what the mystery wisdom symbols mean. And that's what we do here. We give it, as Rudolf Steiner gave it to the Christian community priests. We give what the symbols of the apocalypse are, and then you can say, aha, our time, the description of the time that we're in right now, the Anglo-Germanic cultural age. You have to be careful with these things because we've tried to come up with did I get it right? Cultural age. We're in the Anglo-Germanic. It's the, what are we calling it? Period. We're calling it period. So the Anglo-Germanic period that started in, John always points out exactly 1414 and goes to about beyond 3,500, 3,500. As we're in that period, we are in the period that Rudolf Steiner said would be related to Sardis. So if you read the note to Sardis, that's where we're at. And it's so exact that it goes along with everything that, well, we've been preaching these things because why? That was the interpretation we got when we read them with the wisdom, mystery wisdom, insight, and correspondences that Rudolf Steiner gives us. So we can give you quite a bit of detail about the far future also, even what the earth and the moon and the sun are going to do. But today we're going to talk about the nearer side of that. But the nearer side of that is the period between the great flood of Atlantis, and I'm going to be the first person to ever say this, but I have to say it because it's the truth, and the first war of all against all. So what does that mean? Where there's a possible war of all against all happening right now. There's another one that is going to happen when the moon reunites with the earth at around 8,000 AD. And then there's another one called the upheaval of the elements, or the revolution of the elements, or the great war of all against all, which is going to happen in about 38,000 AD. So we've given you that big picture. But now, if you want to go into the details, let's go into that, John. The fact that our times are such a critical moment. Steiner made many, many remarks that aren't in these books, so we can point these things out to people. For instance, that every soul that there is that is incarnated now. The great masters, not only the group of 112, but perhaps the group of the other 12, like there's all 24 of these great elders, all incarnated right now. Ahriman is incarnated now. Sorat had his influence at the turn of the century. So are we going to enter in 6,000 years too early into the war of all against all? And even, as Steiner said, have the ability, which he says in other quotes that we provide in these books, that show that we could end all of the divine plan. We could end the entire thing. And he also tells us how we'll know if that's going to happen. And by the way, it hasn't happened, as far as I'm concerned. So are we in the war of all against all, John?
Well, why mess around? Let's get right to the deepest subjects. Yeah, well, in looking at these things, and obviously anybody who's attempted to unlock the mysteries within the Apocalypse of St. John, the book of Revelations, you see in there very cryptic images. And by the way, it has a happy ending, so don't get lost in all the scary parts. But there is a certain way in which the cosmic cycles unfold. It's called the Seven Great Mysteries. Madame Blavatsky, the author of The Secret Doctrine of Gnosis Unveiled, she referred to it as the seven unutterable secrets. It's also covered by C.G. Harrison. And in there, if you go looking at it, you'll find that really what happens is reoccurring cycles. And last show, I mentioned that the days of the week, for example, lay out that cycle, starting from Saturn going all the way through to Venus, leaving out the Vulcan cycle, but including the Mars-Mercury half of Earth evolution. So there's always this sevenfold mystery that concerns time, whereas there's a 12-fold mystery that is the mystery of space, like the 12 edges on a cube or the 12 signs of the zodiac. Now, why am I saying this? Well, Douglas is mentioning the war of all against all. And really, the war of all against all is essentially a mystery of the seventh mystery. And that's the mystery of godliness. And so that's the point. It's like a ring past knot. If you haven't graduated from whatever particular growth cycle you're in, then you go back. You don't transfer to the next stage along with the others that have. And so it's a cycle of rejection on one level, because if you've decided you just want to be an Ahrimanic elemental being, then okay, that's your choice. You can go do that and decide not to have an ego, or you could decide just to be a being of soul and body with no spirit, or you could be a being with really no soul and no spirit. I mean, there's some really dark pathways, or pathways of false light, that one can go down, and you're free to do that. It's as St. Paul said, everything is allowed, but these things are not always helpful.
Boy, that's for sure. I'm going to read something because you just brought it up. People want to say there's a rapture. Well, there's other scriptures besides Revelation that say, from the Bible, that state that you're going to meet Christ in the clouds, or Christ will come from east to west, appear to everyone at once, and we will rise to meet him, so on and so forth. Yes, that's all very well and good. And that's happening right now, by the way. It's the problem. People are waiting for the event when it's already happened. And in the book of Revelation, as John pointed out, it is a victory story. If you're the one who gets the white tunic, you are going to be very happy. In the books here, we have a description of all the good things you're going to get if you are taken in the harvest. Now, the problem is, I don't know, and I've never once in my life, and I've been around a few years, and I've been in a lot of churches, never once heard anyone quote this little passage I'm going to quote to you. And what it says is that the Son of Man, that Christ, comes on a white cloud, and he takes a sickle after the voice of God basically says it's time to reap the harvest. So early on, before any of the horrible stuff in the book of Revelation, and by the way, at the end of the book, it's a big party. It's a wedding. You're the bride. You're marrying the Lamb, and the Lamb's coming. Well, really, New Jerusalem's coming down from heaven with the tree of life. You get everything. You get the white stone. You get the mark on the head. You get like 50 promises of the most beautiful things for doing one thing: enduring. That's all it says. The only thing you have to do. There's nothing about, your fruit, of your labor, or good works or anything. No, one thing: endure. But what people don't notice is that this happens before the tribulation. But then the people who are the good people who are harvested, they stay with Christ and the throne of God throughout all of that, and it doesn't affect them. Somehow, magically, they go right through. And the other people, oh, no. Another angel calls out to bring another sickle and fire, and they cut down all basically the bad people, throw them in the wine press, and press their body into blood. Not very good, I would say. I don't want to be those people. So how am I going to do this? Well, first off, are you wearing a white tunic? What does that mean? It means that your soul, what many people call Sophia, your holy soul, the virgin soul, your spiritual soul, is going to basically have to be so pure that you have a white tunic on. And all the evil people, as time goes on, they get so evil you can see it in their face and their body and their movements, everything about them. But for the good people, oh my goodness, what Steiner points out here, the next two epochs, the Russian and the future Russian, the future American, it's beautiful for the people who've been harvested, as described here in the book of Revelation. And if you listen to what is being told here, I can see why people might get confused that there's a rapture, because these people are going to be selected, just as Steiner refers to numerous times this has happened in history, that a remnant, and in the Bible it says, in the Revelation, it says 144,000. That, of course, is a number to do with what John was just talking about, the mystery of 12. But these 144,000, they're protected. And they have every good thing you can possibly imagine. And they're singing the new song of the Lamb of God. In other words, their groom, the one they're going to marry, their higher spiritual self, which is a Christ himself. And they're preaching the eternal gospel. What's the eternal gospel? The good news. Gospel's good news. So the eternal good news is, guess what? You're immortal. You're not going to die at death permanently. No, you're going to live on. And so when you're talking about this white tunic, that is one of the great mysteries, which is again revealed in this book here, Surviving Apocalypse. What is this white tunic? The white tunic is what you carry over from one life to the next as your good deeds. Steiner would call it the box of karma in your heart. But let's go to this quote, because I don't quote too much, but directly from the Bible, so you can see I'm not making this up. This would be Revelation 14:14, and it says, I quote, "And I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and upon the cloud one sat like unto the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud, Thrust in thy sickle, and reap, for the time is come for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe." And then it goes into the nasty things they do to the bad people. But why is this the time that's right? As we've shown you before, with the pendulum, or they call it the bathtub pendulum, right? Starts and gets, so it's swinging, right? So once we get past the fourth, the middle, because there's 7 stages. Once you get past the fourth, you get to the 5th. That's the ripe stage. We are it. People think there's a judgment in the book of Revelation, where the judgment is described in other places in the Bible. Yes, there is. And who makes the judgment? Obviously, the Son of Man, that's who we are when we finally become who we're supposed to be. So we judge our own selves. So you need to know right now, it only takes you to decide whether you're going to get through the apocalypse. And if you have not been harvested, then you better get ripe enough so you're harvested. It's as simple as that. And what is it that causes you to be ripe enough to harvest? It's like the fruit of the harvest. It endured. It lived. The birds didn't get it. The evil didn't get it. The rains didn't get it. The too much sun didn't get it. Somehow the grapes turned out just fine. And they're delicious. And we are that harvest. And so what happens to them? It clearly says in the book of Revelation, they're given a white tunic. They're taken to the throne of God. At some point, they're protected underneath the throne of God. But they get to witness all these things from a vantage point that is not down here where tribulation is happening. So the reality is there's multiple dimensions going on at any time. You've heard us say this. It's in all of in any writing I've ever written. I usually say the only difference between you perceiving heaven and hell on earth is you. You project. And there's a heaven behind all of creation. But if you don't see that, if you don't open yourself to it, you won't see it. So if you are one who has the tunic, then you probably know it already.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a story of Paramahansa Yogananda, who's still laying in state out in California, and he smells like roses. So he must have known something. But a woman walked up to him and said, "Paramahansa Yogananda, you're going to go to hell." He looked at her kindly and said, Well, I may get there by and by, but obviously you're there already. And so there's a certain clearinghouse effect. And really, what it has to do with is participation. And in every one of the Gospels, there's made mention of John the Baptist, and they talk about making straight the way of the Lord. And Rudolf Steiner says that they translate that word as straight. And he said that's not really the point. He said it'd be more correct to translate it as open, that you are opening to grace. And so it requires you to do something. You can't just have it forced on you. It's not the same thing. And then what is this way of the Lord? What do they mean, Lord? Well, the word they translate that from is Kyrios. And Rudolf Steiner says that Kyrios represents the ego that was donated to you through the agency of the Elohim, like Jehovah Elohim and the other Elohim, of which there are 7 principal Elohim. They are the exousiai. And these are spirits of form, and that they actually donated out of their very substance, the substance of your ego. It came about through the agency of Christ, the great Son being, the central being of our whole system. And so that is a very high-flying concept, but really, essentially what it boils down to is you have a choice to take that up or reject it. If you become those that reject it, then, well, you don't ripen. And if you think about fruit ripening, how does fruit ripen? It ripens in the sun. And you look at what Douglas was talking about earlier with the demon Sorath. What is he? He's a sun demon. What is he trying to do? He's trying to withhold the sun from you. He's trying to prevent you becoming the destined sun being that you were meant to be. And Rudolf Steiner says that when we go into the after death state, we go through the planetary spheres, but that in order for us to be conscious, once we reach the region of the sun, it requires that participation, that openness within this second chakra that is specifically related to the word, the logos, the 6th mystery. And so to get to the 6th mystery, you have to get to the 5th mystery, which is the mystery of evil. And I'm sorry to say, folks, that's where we are right now. We're in the 5th mystery. We're in the 5th post-Atlantean period, and we get to see all this craziness and nonsense going on, swirling around us. You turn on the TV, and almost everything they say isn't true. And so these great specters of falsehood are creating huge waves and crests of karma that are going to return, and people are going to be able to face the shadow images of life that they've created, and hopefully they'll come to realize that this is the very thing that's providing the shade that's preventing their fruit from ripening.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And now the question is, where are you? Where'd you come from? Where are you? Where are you going? So I'm going to read to you the description of our age, and you see if it makes any sense to you, especially in relationship to what we've already said, and see if it in any way relates to your life or what you see going on outside in the world, because I think it's quite accurate. I'm not even going to give you a preview of it. I'm just going to read it. This is, of course, from the book of Revelation, and it's the description to Sardis, which we would call the Anglo-Germanic period. I always have to look at you when I say this, make sure I get it right. Okay, be watchful and strengthen the things which remain that are ready to die. Stop right there. Be watchful and strengthen the things which remain eternal. That's the eternal gospel. Strengthen the things which remain, that go beyond time and space, that are ready to die. So here's the good news. Evil is going to die. And unfortunately, 2/3 of humanity is not going to move into becoming an angel when they're supposed to. And they'll have all the other choices John just described. But so what is this? This is the time we're supposed to be awake. We're supposed to be watchful. This is the time when the ripe are picked when they're ripe, when the harvest is taken. So I'll begin again. Be watchful and strengthen the things which remain, that are ready to die. For I have not found thy works perfect before God. That's an understatement. Remember, therefore, how thou hast received and heard, and hold fast and repent. If therefore thou shalt not watch, I will come on thee as a thief, and thou shalt know not what hour I will come upon thee. Thou hast a few names, even in Sardis, which have not defiled their garments. There's the garments. They didn't defile themselves. And they shall walk with me in white. There's the white tunic. For they are worthy. In other words, they're ripe. He that overcometh, oh, there it is, that word I mentioned. The only thing I can tell in all of Revelation you're asked to do is endure or overcome, which, in other words, you have to put up with evil. And in the end, as John said, will conquer evil. So he that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in white raiment. And I will not blot out his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my God and before his angels. Those are some of the promises. That your name will be confessed before God. In other words, you'll have an advocate to the throne of God, and you'll be in a white tunic or a white raiment. What is that? Well, when a clairvoyant looks at somebody who's holy, that's what you see. The outer thing looks like shimmering white light that you can see through. But then when you get really close and you get close to the heart, you see the most beautiful magenta, kind of a rose-colored, what is that? A peach-colored, just a beautiful color. And Steiner says that is the perfect balanced aura of a person. So when they get to the white, that means they've gone beyond the soul. They're just spirit. They don't even have a color anymore. They're just white. And that's what happens right there. We're told here in Sardis, here in our age, the Anglo-Germanic age, we are to stand ready like the bridesmaids who are waiting for the groom to come in the night. And he even gives, the Bible gives you special instructions. Leave your clothes on. Keep your lamp trimmed. Have the food ready. Have all the festivities and the things you're taking to the feast and to the wedding ready. What is that? Same exact description in the book of Revelation, is it not? It tells you exactly what to do, when to do it, and what the outcome will be. Now, the bad news is for the people who don't want to follow the divine plan. And as John said, it's an openness. It's a surrender. It's how do you endure? You surrender. How do you overcome? Well, right now we overcome through gentleness. Evil is overcome now through gentleness. In the future, we will go out and we will battle with evil. But okay, we're going to have to talk about that in a minute. If you think it's bad now, it's going to get much, much worse. And the evil people will no longer, as John said, even have a spirit. They may not have a soul. They may just be like an insect or like a slug, or they could be far beyond a human's cleverness, and they could be these black magicians that Steiner talks about. But guess what? They have no power over the people in the white tunics. None. Sing them the song, the eternal gospel. They'll go away. Laugh at them. Tell them to get behind you. These evil people will kill the majority of people on the earth, according to Rudolf Steiner. When will this happen? You don't have to worry. It's not going to happen until about sometime just before 3775 AD or so, as we move into the future Russian, used to call the cultural age we now call periods. Did I get it right? This is difficult, folks. That's the reason you better have a John Barnwell chart sitting right next to you. Now, if I could get it right by just opening the book and looking at the charts. But the point is that the names don't matter. It's how you characterize it and if you know what's supposed to happen. So at the same time that evil becomes so bad that the war of Armageddon gets ready, and in a minute I'm going to read you the sixth bowl of wrath or vial of wrath. And it mentions Armageddon. It mentions the war everybody's scared of. And it looks as if, when you read this, that the time is now. But the reality is a little bit different than that. There's the big picture, the divine picture. But there's the short picture. If you died right now, guess what? You'd see the same thing if you were a high spiritual initiate that John the Divine saw. You'd see the apocalypse, the uncovering of the soul, which shows you the past, the present, and the future. So the things we're talking about now can be experienced by people who are clairvoyant, and they get intuitions from what are the general directions of the divine plan. Of course, we have freedom, so we can mess it all up. That's the reason Steiner says right now, if we develop what's called the third force, which has the power to move planets, we will mess up the whole thing, probably because in the year about 8,000, the moon is going to break into pieces and start to fall towards the earth. Now, if you had the power to move a planet and it was a ray gun, it's a resonance machine. Steiner describes this in great detail. And you're able to move a planet, what would the scientists do? They'd first see what they could destroy with it. Well, if we can move a planet, let's move the moon and see, let's see if we can do it. It wouldn't surprise me that we develop the capacity to cause the moon to fall to the earth too soon. But when the moon does fall to the earth in around 8,000 AD, there will be no more male and female propagation of the species. It will be done through speech. So imagine all that's going to be developed between now, 2000 and 8,000, that we won't even have sexuality as it is now. We will be able to propagate. And remember, it goes on for another 30,000 years after that. We're not getting out of this, folks. We will have to incarnate multiple times in these different periods. And as we do, if you're incarnated with the white tunic and a good body, if you can find one, and you are in future Russia, Steiner says that the being of Sophia will be there like your companion. You'll be able to speak to her, the being from the Kyrioteites, the beings of wisdom. He also says that in the future, for these people who are in the white tunic, who were harvested, who did have their rapture, and now are moved into basically a new spiritual dimension, you have unbelievable capacities and opportunities. It's shocking. I was just reading where he was saying emphatically, the beings between the moon, Venus, Mercury, and Vulcan, but particularly Venus, Mercury, and Vulcan, those beings are the future, and they're coming to us now trying to help us. So everywhere I look, I see amazing people doing amazing things where they're not doing, one of these, I'm channeling something from Lemuria thing. No. Or I'm channeling some ancient master from Atlantis. No. They're speaking directly from their heart, and they have it. They're enlightened, and they're on the path of initiation. And every time I look out there, I find more people like this. So why? Because Sophia is helping, the Archangel Michael is helping, Christ is helping, Sophia, the Holy Spirit is helping, all the hosts of the saints, the angels, they're all helping us. So yes, there's a lot of evil. Turn in the opposite direction, and there's more light and more good now than there has ever been on the face of the earth. This is the Satya Yuga. For 5,000 years, we were in the dark age of Kali Yuga. In 1900, we went into Satya Yuga, the age of light. The Kalki Avatar is here. I think I know her, as a matter of fact. The Maitreya Buddha's here. Yeah, I think I might have had lunch with him once. Saint Germain's here. They're all here. So what is your problem? If you want to advance spiritually, you have no excuse. I just found some resources last night that give me access to Steiner that I didn't even know existed before. And so every day, more is revealed and more is brought forward to counteract evil with mildness, with love, with compassion. Because right now and in the future, if you're an evolved being, your number one job, and this really gets people upset when I tell them this, but when you become an angel, you don't go flying off to all the angel discotheques and the bars and the angel heavens and the angel beaches. No, you turn around and you help the poor animal humans try to become human again. You become literally a guardian angel for a being who's going through their humanness. And until you know, like a mother, how to midwife that being, and so you have to midwife yourself. So what we're learning right now is how to build not the spiritual hut in the future or what Christ called the mansions in heaven, which we talked about last time. What we're building now is the ark. Now, what's an ark? An ark is, whether it's Noah's ark or whether it's Manu's ark or whether it's all the traditions have an ark where the patriarch is in an ark and they're going through a flood. So that was Atlantis. And so once the time that we've seen that Lemuria was taken by fire, Atlantis was taken by water, it is predicted that this age, that this epoch will be taken by air. Okay, how is that? Well, guess what, folks? Right now, through your body, there's about 10 billion invisible attacks from 10 billion different directions from electromagnetic frequencies that are trying to eat your ego, as John was talking about. So you don't have to look anywhere for evil. This is the age of evil. But are you going to be able to stop it? No, because it's running on the unconsciousness of humans who have been basically duped by demons into going into subnature instead of supernature. So what we have is, as we're headed towards the future, we need to remember, yes, it may get very, very dark for some, and we will see the war of all against all. We will see Armageddon. We will see all of that. And worse, we'll see the earth break into pieces. But guess what? Rudolf Steiner said that even in the next age, the future Russian age and into the future American age, those people in the tunics, those people who have been harvested, the people who have been called by the Son of Man, by Christ, holy cow, you wouldn't believe. They won't even walk on earth. He says many of them will no longer walk on the earth. Now, he says these cryptic things, you don't know what to make of them. But think of this. If the moon is breaking into pieces, coming back to the earth is breaking into pieces, and then right after that, the sun starts to change, and we start to all merge the sun, the moon, and the earth into one big amorphous chrysalis, along with the other planets, and then we go through a transformation in the far future, right? Then as we go between one age to the next, we have these rest periods, these prolayas. They're periods where nobody really understands them because there's hardly anything going on there except what is called endurance. There's no space, there's no time, there's no consciousness. There's endurance. And there's the intelligence, what Steiner literally calls your relics. So John has relics, I have relics, and when we die, Christ carries them over to your next incarnation. And then when we pass from the earth to future Jupiter, he carries those relics into the future. Now, we've discussed a little bit what those relics are. I'm not going to get into that today, but that's some of the super secrets of anthroposophy that only Steiner has been able to bring forward. And now, if you check them, you will find that it makes perfectly good sense. So as we are now facing in Sardis, the fact that Christ can come at any time, what does that mean? The groom is coming and you're the bride. What does that mean? It means Christ is appearing in the etheric realm, in the realm that Steiner and the ancient Eastern wisdom teachers called Shambhala. So how do you get through the apocalypse? How do you make your ark? First off, you see Christ in the white cloud, in the etheric, and you hope that he harvests you, and you do everything you can to try to witness Christ in the etheric by doing what? Emulating him. And then what do? You build an ark. What is an ark? An ark are the good deeds that you're making right now that literally around you create an ark, just like Noah had an ark. And I would love to get into a long discussion on this, but in the ark, what saved Noah? What saved Noah? What saved all the animals in his family? The head of Adam that had a seed, and it's debated, the story is told two different ways, a seed from the tree of life, or the seed from the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil that had intertwined, and Seth went back to the Garden of Eden. The angel allowed him to get these seeds. But by the time he came back to save Adam, Adam had died. So he put him on his tongue, and his head turned into the Holy Grail, or what they call the Zohar stone. Or they also refer to this as the windows that were in the ark that brought nourishment and light and life. This was also called the stones from the Garden of Eden in some cases, the Zohar stones, Zohar. So what happens here? Abraham eventually ended up wearing that on a necklace, and anyone who came to him saw the glory of God from the Zohar stone. Now, what is this? What is this Holy Grail? What is it that's supposed to make your ark float? What is it that's supposed to give you life when you have to go through the flood of tribulation? What is it that is supposed to give you nourishment and nourish everyone who comes near it? That is the inexhaustible chalice of your heart that is overflowing with the love of Christ. But to make that ark, Steiner says in the last address something extremely cryptic, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about this, John. He says that in the future, things are going to be saved by 4 groups of 12 people working together. So these groups of 12 get together, they work together. There's 4 groups, 48 people. Tyler and I have talked about this many, 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 many times. Who are those 48? What are they doing? And are they building separate arks, John?
Well, I think that what you have to understand is that this is essentially a cosmic mystery. And so when you start trying to unlock the secrets that are painted so artistically by St. John the Divine on the Isle of Patmos, where he's there with the mother of Jesus, and he lived into a nice old age, but he was a very special individual in that the whole key to unlocking what we're discussing here, if you want the short form of it, you can go to the first 14 verses in the Gospel of John, and that will give you the basic storyline that we're trying to approach here. But in returning to John the Baptist, the co-worker with St. John the Divine, that you have him saying metanoia, okay? Metanoia. And they translate that as repent. And it's really an admonition to change your way of thinking, okay? Now, it's very clear when you get into some of the indications that Douglas has given you that you have to endure. Okay, change your mind about how you look at the world, because you're invited. You know, in the chemical wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz, he receives an invitation to this chemical wedding, in which he ends up being the one that is getting married, that he's able to marry himself to the divine wisdom, and that the rapture of that experience is that expression of love in things coming together. And so that's that whole concept of the infinite compassion that is described by the Buddhists as avalokiteshvara or chenrezig. And so you have that love for all sentient beings. It's not enough just to love your family. It's not enough just to love the people in the country you live. It's not even enough to love all the people on earth. You got to love all the animals and all the plants and all the stones and the stars in the sky, until you become this radiant being of love. And that's what Christ did. He showed us how to do that. He did it for us, so that through grace we can participate in that glory. And I know it seems kind of far-fetched. And given most people the way they spend their days, I'm not surprised that they would think that, because they've been told all day long that the world is this inane place and nothing matters, and goodness is relative and it's just an opinion, and all this stuff that's there intentionally to bring you down, when in fact it's just absolutely glorious what's happening. I just would, one thing I do wish that would have been nice if Ariel could have been here with us to look at this uh, tremendous drama going on. And it's that revealed aspect of the mystery that's so exciting. But in returning to those sevenfold mysteries, I guess I have to mention the rest of them, because some of you might have not caught one of my many hundred episodes of things where I talk about it. But the first mystery is the abyss. The second mystery is number. The third is affinity, or alchemy, you could say. The fourth mystery is birth and death. That's earth. We're on earth. We're born and we die. The fifth mystery is the mystery of evil. The sixth mystery is the logos. And the seventh mystery is godliness. So you see, this is a succession of events, and it happens, that whole sequence takes place within a nanosecond. And then in all longer cycles of time, it's a reoccurring cycle, a recapitulation of ontogeny, and ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. And that's the sequence of events. Whether you look at the growth cycle of a plant, and you see there are 7 separate stages in that, or in the growth cycle of a human being, of which Douglas is a master of studying these cycles of development in education, for example. But it's all right there. And it's not like you have to do all these things. It's just to be a participant, that you want to be a part of this great symphony that's going on. You don't have to be a soloist. You could just be a part of the symphony. So come in the water's fine.
Yeah, exactly. If you can experience Christ in the etheric, that's the second coming of Christ. What else are you waiting for? You don't need a rapture. And how can you do that? By rising up to see through your own astral body, by taming your astral body, and then looking through it to the etheric, and you will absolutely see Christ in the etheric. Every spiritual tradition, every spiritual path knows this. And every great spiritual being I've ever met, I always ask them about this. They have different names for it, but everybody knows it if they're clairvoyant. Now, the question is, when these people get together, for instance, you mentioned Ariel and Brian and Bobby and all these different people. We used to have 48 people here in this area that we got together with for big meetings. And but we found that it was a group of 4 people. And I've seen that happen a lot, that a group of 4 people can really somehow present the 12 different views, the world views, or present the 12 different aspects of the zodiac into the circle that you're working with, so that you can then call down angels by creating an interest so that the angel will come. So I believe that the arc can be done with one person. And I've written a story. It's in a book we're going to be doing soon called, well, this story is called The Fairy Tale of the North. But it's about creating an arc. And what is the arc? The arc is when you tune your body to the harmony of the spheres. So the 7 planets are tuned to your 7 organs, the 7 chambers of your heart, the 7 chambers of your head. And you start to realize that your projections and everything you project and everything you perceive is totally up to you. And so if you start to project the eternal gospel, in other words, you're saying, I'm not worried about space, time, and consciousness. I'm eternal. And I love you eternally. And it goes from life to life. That's another book we've written called Immortal Love. And we're trying to show there that the minute that you know that you've been with someone from a previous incarnation, bingo, bango, you know that you're immortal. You are a reincarnating soul. But can you go the opposite direction and lose that capacity? Not really. Nothing is ever wasted in the long run, but you might have to wait a very long time. So if we're going to talk about Sardis, I'm just going to read this because this upset people so much when this happened recently that I'm going to read it and then try to explain it so you won't have fear and anxiety about it. But what happens is people go to the Bible and they don't know the meanings and they don't know the symbols. And so when they read them, they freak out. I don't want to read the sixth seal. That's too far into the future. I want to read the sixth angel. So during our time, the sixth angel sounds and poured out his bowl of the great river Euphrates. Did you see this in the news? The Euphrates completely went down and these caves were revealed and people would go and they'd listen. I've heard these tapes from different points, people, who went there and recorded it. And it sounds like some kind of demonic speech is coming out of these caves. And you can't even understand what the caves are. But the water's gone down so far, it's revealed these. And these, they say, are the three voices of the frogs that are mentioned here. In other words, the voice of the dragon, the voice of the beast, and the voice of the Satan or the Antichrist. So the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east. Then I saw three impure spirits that looked like frogs. They came out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, out of the mouth of the false prophet. They are demonic spirits that perform signs, and they go out to the kings of the whole world to gather them for the battle on the great day of God Almighty. Look, I come like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake and remains clothed, so as not to go naked and be shamefully exposed. Then they gathered the kings together to the place that the Hebrew call Armageddon. Now, some people will tell you that's happened with the Euphrates. The kings of the East, we know, of course, could be considered to be Russia and China and others. And that the battle for Armageddon has already been planned right now as we speak. Every once in a while, they're launching missiles that go right over Armageddon, which is Armageddon, the battlefield. The very plains, there's literally missiles going over the battlefield, the plains of Armageddon. So are we at the end? No, we're not at the end. And the reason we're not at the end is because the sun is not going to burn us up, because the sun reacts to human love and the human heart and human advancement. Abraham argued so that with God not to totally destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, but to take the righteous out. So a remnant was saved. A remnant was saved with Noah, with Manu. And in 3101 BC, Rudolf Steiner said at the beginning of the Kali Yuga that all human beings basically went to sleep. They fell down, they went to sleep. About a third of them woke up. So there are great changes that are happening. And will we see basically the war against all being with weapons right now? I don't believe so, because I see too many other good things happening. And sometimes the evil in our age blots out the good. But I see fantastic things happening because, of course, I can perceive these things in some cases. And there are more spiritual beings weaving in and out of human manifestation in this physical plane, basically defying the dimensions to let people notice, hey, wake up. There's something more than the material world. And that's what building your ark is. Your ark is saying, I know the flood's coming, but I'm going to live through it. Why? Because I was part of the harvest. I'm wearing the white tunic. I know what's going to happen in the future. I'm not going to cop out and think that I'm going to be saved for nothing. Some of the rapture versions are, I get saved. Why? Because I don't know why. I just get saved. And I rapture and I go to heaven. Well, did you deserve it? Well, that's not the question. I believe in rapture. Well, rapture comes every time you cross the threshold when you sleep, every time you cross the threshold when you die, and every time you cross the threshold when you can do it in a transcendental meditation or prayer or concentration or contemplation. So you can cross into these realms, and when you do, you're going to see the same exact things. All the great visitations of Mary or the mother or the beautiful lady all say the same thing. They show them hell, and then they show them heaven. And that's what we're trying to do in this book, Surviving Apocalypse, Creating Your Ark.